Good morning. My name is Pat O'Connell. I'm calling to order the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission's regular open meeting. It's Thursday, October 17th, and we're here in the Bochum building and also broadcasting online. Mr. Redig E. Martinez, could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Ellison.
Present.
Commissioner Aguilera.
Present, I don't have a mic.
Present. Commissioner O'Connell.
Present.
All commissioners are present and you have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Great, thank you. Next up is a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, the symbol of perfect friendship among the United cultures. Commissioners, we have an agenda. It was posted actually Friday afternoon, holiday on Monday. Do you have any revisions you'd like to see the agenda or proceed as is?
No revisions for me, thank you. I'm fine as is, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so with no revisions, the agenda will proceed with the agenda as was posted. Next up is public comment. Do we have anybody in the room who's here to provide public comment? Okay, I'm seeing a couple folks here in the room. I also know that we have a number of folks who have registered online to provide public comment, and that's wonderful. We also have an agenda that we have to get through today. So what we do in this setting for public comment is we limit it to 3 minutes out of respect for, we want to hear from everybody. And we also have business that we need to conduct. So public comment is welcome. We'll take the public comment in the room first. And again, please limit yourself to 3 minutes. So do we have a volunteer to go first among those in the room here? Okay. Go ahead. Because we're broadcasting this, it's better if you sit at the table and then push the button to turn the mic green. And then please go ahead and give us your name. Yeah, push the red button, it'll become green.
All right.
Thank you.
I'm Monica Steinhoff. I have lived in New Mexico for 50 years this time and 7 years before that as I was a kid. So I have observed society a lot, and I'm an artist. So part of my being an artist is my observation of society. And I realized that in this particular case, the government has not decreed that we cannot raise health issues. So I'm going to talk about health issues because I'm one of the few people in society who does not have a smartphone, because right from the beginning, I could feel that, you know, when I had my little flip phone, you know, I could feel that it was hurting my hands, which sounds very weird. But I've read a lot about it. There were a lot of books about wireless at the beginning. And it was really interesting. Within 2 years, I went to Zimmerman Library because I was also trained as a scholar. I was in the PhD program in Berkeley for 3 years in literature. And I went to and there was nothing against wireless anymore. It was all gone. There are many books anyway, like Zapped, Disconnected, obviously, you know, and the main, and this gentleman's not here. Oh, there's more seats over there. This gentleman is not here because he's ill, but he wrote the most important book about it, which I'm sure I would like to know if anyone in this room has read it. It's called The Invisible Rainbow, A History of Electricity. Has anyone here read it? Yes. One person. Okay. 2 people. Very good. Okay, well, he's too sick now to come here, so he's doing it on Zoom, I suppose. You know, so, but I think that this is really typical in some ways of some of the ways that society can go wrong. Like, we don't educate people about wireless. My husband is just retiring from being a personal injury attorney. And one of the things he always reminds me is only the federal government insures these companies. Because everyone, all those people behind the scenes know it is not good for humans. And I have watched in the last 15 years, almost everyone my age has passed away. I'm 80, almost 83. Saturday, I'll be 83. And, you know, no one died of natural causes that I know, which, you know, of course, my own experience is limited, but I've also read a lot. I read the newspapers, I read everything, you know, and many people, I had 6 siblings, 3 of them in the last 10 years died of cancer, liver cancer, you know, anyway, cancers, breast cancer, lung cancer. And then I've had many friends and people who had cell towers even on their lands. And you may say, what has this got to do with smart meters? Well, the smartness is the wireless. And if you really look at society, I think it's made people dumber. You know, the technology's gotten smarter and smarter, but people don't understand it. And it's gotten way beyond, you know, there are very few people here compared to the enormity of this question. You know, I and many people, everyone I know has sleep problems. And we bought a house on Galisteo, which is an old 150-year adobe. And I thought, good, it has a basement, even a little basement. If worse comes to worse, I'll move into the basement.
No.
Well, things were really good for a couple
Just
of years.
Remind you that
That's-
we've got quite a few people that are trying to give
Yes.
public comment, and out of respect for everybody, we've been limiting the time.
Yes.
You're
okay.
beyond your 3 minutes
I'm
now.
already beyond 3
Yes.
minutes. I'm beyond the 3 minutes.
Yes,
Okay, well, anyway, it's a health issue.
great.
That's the most important thing. And most of society has no idea. So I really plead with you, vote against it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. Next,
Is it still turned appropriately?
Harvey.
Is the whatever I'm supposed to push, that's still push? Okay.
This will help you know where you're at.
Oh, thank you. Okay. For 9 months, starting in December 2016, I was, without my knowledge, being bombarded by Wi-Fi in my house from a modem replacement. 8 years later, I am still in recovery from the radiation that damaged every organ system in my body, which turned my hair white and much fell out. I would never know what might not work each morning as I would awaken. Luckily, the radiation also created senility, and I couldn't remember from one day to the next that I wanted to kill myself, and the pain of being fried alive, because that's what it feels like. It was very hot. And anyway, I have some excerpts from a paper that I found on the NIH National Library of Medicine, PubMed, and I will mention some excerpts from that. It's called Risk to Health and Well-Being from Radio Frequency Radiation emitted by cell phones and other wireless devices. And I think smart meters would come under other wireless devices as they emit radio frequencies throughout one's home 24/7. And it impacts health-wise all living things. So in this particular study, they mentioned that children are way more susceptible to radiation, and like 20 times more than an adult male. And they did studies on that and found it was very harmful for children in particular. And then for men, it actually diminished sperm count and mobility, and actually damaged mitochondrial DNA. And then some other specifics from it were the incidence of neuroepithelial brain cancers significantly increased in all children, adolescents, and young adult age groupings in the United States. I have to have this as big so I can see it because my eyes were damaged. A sustained and a statistically significant rise in glioblastoma multiforme across all ages has been described in the UK. The incidence of several brain tumors are increasing at statistically significant rates. According to the 2010-2017 Central Brain Tumor Registry of the US, there was a significant increase in incidence of radiographically diagnosed tumors of the pituitary from 2006 to 2012. This paper was published in 2019.
Thank you for being here today and providing your comment. Again, we've got to try to
Yes,
collect comment from as many people as possible.
yes,
So
and I would
you're
say,
beyond your 3 minutes, so if you could just
Yeah.
summarize.
and I will, well, basically, there are a lot of cancers that are being created by submitting to any radiation in the house. And also smart meters have been known to burn down houses, and also smart meters, the electricity that you gain from it because they're monitoring 24/7 back and forth, sending radiation throughout the house. They cost more. Your electric bills will be higher. And a lot of people are moving from any state that says they must have cell phone towers. They will leave.
Thank you for your comment. Anyone else? Yes, go ahead. Oh, sorry, there's 2 of you in line here.
Signed up for the Zoom, but I'm here, so.
Okay.
Okay, in 2019, I was living in Los Angeles where I'd lived for decades. I started developing these tremors, headaches, heart palpitations. I couldn't sleep. I felt like my whole body was being electrocuted at night. And after figuring out what was wrong with me, I moved here 5 years ago. I took this meter, which measures electromagnetic fields. For a year, I was searching for a home. It took me a whole year of finding my refuge. And so I feel like if I can't seek refuge in my own home, where am I going to find it? People who develop what's called electrohypersensitivity, which is what I have, they basically get it from various immune compromised positions they're in, whether it's chemical exposures, mold, Lyme, autoimmune diseases, of which there are over 100. And now since COVID, people are experiencing even more autoimmunity issues. And since this is an elderly population in Santa Fe, I feel like this is really going to exacerbate between the COVID and the 5G being piled on, which 5G has never been tested. The FCC actually lost a lawsuit. They had to admit they had not done any testing on it because the telecoms are allowed to do their own testing, not get independent testing. And that's the case with Wi-Fi too. Thousands of independent studies have shown that it's not healthy for humans to be exposed to Wi-Fi, to radio frequencies. And because the FCC claims it's true, does not make it so. Big Tobacco said tobacco was safe before enough people had to die. So this isn't just about sensitive people like me, it's about the whole population, because people are experiencing symptoms from radio frequencies, Wi-Fi, all this wireless technology, and they don't know what to attribute it to. Headaches, tinnitus, heart palpitations, anxiety, insomnia, tremors, inflammation, skin problems, all of these things have been proven by independent studies to be caused by this. And the problem is, once you get these symptoms, it's too late. You can't reverse them. Your nervous system is damaged. All you can do is abstain from the source. So in my case, I have no wireless. I'm all connected with Ethernet. I don't have a smart meter. And I believe that people should have at the least the option to opt out. But why not reverse it and give people a choice to opt in instead of just giving people no choice or making the people like me pay for it to opt out of it. This is my home. This is my life. This is my refuge. And it creates dirty electricity. It's pulsing 24/7. I mean, for me to I've really healed a lot because I've had to mitigate my whole life according to this. And it's really changed my life for the worse, but I feel like I have things under control. This is going to reverse everything. So thank you for listening.
Thank you for your comment. Next. Yeah.
Watch the timer. Hi, I've lived in Santa Fe for 29 years now, from the East Coast, and moved here for nature and peace and a more nature-like life. Everything that these other women have talked about is all things that I'm not going to add to. They're all correct. I grew up in a time where we trusted the authorities. We trusted the FCC, we trusted the FDA, we trusted our government to protect us. And I've learned in the last 5 or 10 years, that's not true. Money is behind big governments and big industries. And learning that the FDA, that products are allowed to go out, and then we prove that they're acceptable and that they're not going to do harm. There is enough studies out there on both sides. It's fine. It doesn't cause trouble. It does cause problems. If there are enough studies on both sides, then how can we side with one and say, well, we're just going to disregard all of the other studies that show that there is an issue? We've had 3 women that have already come up and said the major health issues that they've had. And they'll say, well, Wi-Fi doesn't cause a problem. You know, and I live in Park Plaza as a community. We have solid cement block in between our homes. I can get my neighbor's Wi-Fi. So throughout my home. So this is not something that is, you know, okay, we're not going to get Wi-Fi coming through our homes. We already get Wi-Fi coming through our homes. And now you want to add more and have it come through 24/7. And in so many communities in Santa Fe that are attached or close communities, I won't name them all, we know them all. So even if I opt out, if that's an option, I have neighbors all around me. And I already know that that Wi-Fi is going to come through my home because it's already coming through from just the regular Wi-Fi. Now we're going to add something else to it. On the other side of that is also the accuracy, the hacking possibilities, the monitoring and privacy, because I feel like everyone's already spoken about the health issues, which I think should be number 1. And I will add to that, you know, all right, so say there are millions and millions of people if this is going to help, but there are thousands that are going to be hurt. I don't want something that's going to hurt thousands of people. I don't care if it helps millions. The lives of those few thousand are important to me. We always mourn 3,000 people that died in 9/11. We mourn a few hundred or thousands that die in natural disasters. A few people is enough. Years ago, when they did testing on medicines, if a few people got major illnesses from it or died from it, they stopped it. And suddenly the world doesn't care about the few people that are hurt by it. And I, for one, don't want to take part in something that's going to be harmful to people. And as that other woman said, she has refuge in her home. Our homes are a place of privacy. The meters that we have there regulate exactly what's going on in our home. And it's not being transmitted around where anybody else could know what's going on in our home. I don't have smart anything in my home because if it's on my phone, it can be hacked. Somebody can get my privacy. I mean, that's ridiculous. I don't want any of that. I love technology. I love this life. It is. We are so blessed. But I know that when we first got a microwave,
Yeah,
they said,
thank you for your.
it
comments.
was about,
Yeah.
I just think that until we can say 100% it's not harmful, if it's going to harm one person, it's harmful and we shouldn't do it.
Again, thank you for your comment today.
Thank you.
Do we have anyone else here in the room? Yes.
Hi, guys. I'm glad you're listening to people, and I've been here a lot, and I know you've listened to thousands and thousands of people. Your job and what we're paying for you for is to protect the people, to protect us. We're trusting you that you're protecting us. If you're not protecting us, why wouldn't you be protecting us? What about your families, your spouses, your parents, your children, your grandchildren? This stuff obviously is not good. Is this just for money? Are you just going to say yes because the money's so good? Is it worth it? Is it worth killing your grandchildren or your children or your parents or your spouses? This is what it's going to do. You know it's going to do it. We're trusting you. And I'm wondering, do we trust the right people? Or is there any system to protect the people anymore? You know, you guys have heard everything. I've only heard a teeny piece of everyone's experience. I can't believe you'd let your own families, your own neighbors, your own friends be harmed like this. It doesn't make any sense. Are you going to go somewhere where there is no smart meter that's going to make you guys sick or make your family sick? If you're not taking into consideration everyone else, at least think about your own families. You know, is the power and the money so good to say, yeah, go ahead, let's just let them do it and we'll benefit now. Who cares what happens in the future? This is what we trusted you with. This is why we pay you. This is why we choose you. So I can't believe you would just sweep it in at the cost of everything that matters to you, everything that means something to you, all the people you love. I hope and pray that you think with your hearts and you think with thoughts about the future, about future generations, about what's going to happen to Santa Fe, what's going to happen to New Mexico if you allow smart meters. So many people are going to move and leave here and go where there are none. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for your comment. Do we have any other folks here in the room? Yeah. Please come join us up here. And then I know you came in after the introduction, just we've got a lot to do today. And so we're limiting to 3 minutes just to try to make sure we hear from everybody.
I probably don't even need 3
Okay,
minutes.
and then we've got a clock here. if that
Oh,
helps.
okay, so I can time myself.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
So
you.
anyway, thanks for being here.
Well, thank you for hearing us. I think it's very important that the public things like this. I want to make a case for if this goes through, that we do have smart meters, that I and others like me who have particular health issues make that a problem for us, can opt out easily. I think it's totally fine if we can report our own meters, you know, call it in, or actually doing it online is better. I can't do that online right now because I have solar and they won't let me do it online because I have the 2 meters. But anyway, that's a sidestep from this. But if we could, I and those like me can opt out easily without having a big expense, that would be very important for my health and for the health of some others. I know not everyone is going to be affected by these meters. Some people have tough bodies, they got a little armor on them. I don't have that kind of armor. And there are others who do not. And I would like you to make it easy for us to opt out and not have this on our homes. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Once more, anyone else in the room here? Okay, so Mr. Rodriguez, I'm not seeing anybody else in the room, so I'm gonna turn the public comment session over to you if you could help us with people who have registered online.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. We actually only have 4 currently online provide comment, so, and I'll go one by one here. Jennifer Robbins, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Robbins, and I believe this is my 3rd time speaking before this commission on this issue. I wish to be on the public record this morning to voice how PNN and the hearing examiner Christopher Ryan felt the following were not relevant to the New Mexico PRC proceedings concerning case number 22-00058 UT. The damage to public health with the increase in diabetes, heart attacks, stroke, cancer, crib deaths, DNA damage, birth defects, MS, Alzheimer's, autism, ADHD, sleep disorders, depression, anxiety, and suicides are expected to be caused by this radiation in PNM service areas. The effects of this radiation also on human fertility and the increases in need for artificial insemination and in vitro fertilization will also occur in PNM service areas. No armor will protect against this. The monetary costs of these and other health effects of this radiation to individuals and businesses, which will include doctor's visits, hospitalizations, surgeries, and increased spending on medications, all will occur in PNM service areas if these smart meters are implemented. Monetary costs related to the damage these meters will cause from fire to property and data breaches to customer privacy will also be exorbitant. Low-income families having to pay out of pocket recurring cost increases to PNM if they wish to opt out in PNM service areas. The effect of this radiation on local plants and wildlife and the cost of this radiation to the natural environment, specifically with emphasis on the honeybees and other pollinators, as their decline will impact crop production throughout the state. The effects of this radiation on livestock and the cost of this radiation in terms of production of milk, meat, and eggs will impact all New Mexicans. The loss of revenue for folks who will leave New Mexico once smart meters are implemented and the state is no longer a haven for the RF sensitive, as I am one of these. The loss of faith in this commission by the people of this state if choosing to approve corporate greed and profit over the future and well-being of the New Mexicans you serve. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
The next, Nicholas Robbins, are you there?
Good morning. My name is Nicholas Robbins. I have a PhD in political science and have taught college courses in American government, political theory, constitutional law, and American history for several years. I currently live in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I, along with many other concerned citizens, have spoken to you twice before on this topic of great public import. We have presented numerous personal accounts and have cited many scientific studies and various forms of evidence proving that smart meters in particular and radio frequency radiation in general cause much harm to all biological life forms and result in tremendous losses and costs. I would like to remind the Commission once again that authorities and experts have known for quite some time that RF radiation harms the human body and the environment. For example, the militaries of both the United States and the Soviet Union were conducting experiments and research in this area since at least the 1950s. A declassified Defense Intelligence Agency report from March 1976 titled Biological Effect of Electromagnetic Radiation reviews the many harmful effects upon various parts and systems of the human body that were discovered by such research. Yet this information has not been shared widely with the public, as we saw, for example, in other cases, such as the use of DDT by the American military and government, in the case of Big Tobacco, and in the case of Aaron Brockovich, in which PG&E used hexavalent chromium, which was later proven to have a disastrous impact on the health of many people. So I once again urge the Commission to reject PNM's request for smart meter installation because the cost-benefit analysis that informs their perspective completely fails to account for the many negative externalities that will result from this installation. PNM does not at all consider that many harmful and destructive effects from radio frequency radiation, such as healthcare costs, crop loss, and unquantifiable suffering. If approval is granted to PNM's request, then this commission will be complicit in the many resulting harms and costs, and it will have completely failed to consider and protect the health of New Mexicans and the environment of New Mexico, as is required under state law. Please do your jobs. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your comment.
The next, then I have Mary Ellen Underwood. Go ahead, Mary Ellen.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing us to speak. For some of this, we started researching this back in 2016, and I am not going to go over what the other people have said, which I think is excellent. Smart meters, anything that has a smart label is anything but smart. I have a background in marketing, and when I was working on this issue back in 2016 and 17, when a friend said, I like my smartphone, I thought, oh my goodness, they have snuck this in and they have made this word sound like it's something everybody wants. I need to be looking at a washing machine, and now I have to find a washing machine that the Wi-Fi can be turned off. I was affected by the cell tower that went up on Camino Carlos Rey back in 2012. I went from a fair sleeper to sleeping 2 hours a night. As I think Oshana said, once you're damaged, you're damaged. And by the time I've had my computer wired, the damage was done. So I have struggled with not enough melatonin to give me a good night's sleep since 2012. It was a bad idea when it was defeated in 2017, I believe. And it's a worse idea now. My concern is not only for those of us who are affected, but children need to be our priority. Children are our future. And yet, even though you may not be affected, any of you that are making a decision, because not everybody is affected. I recently heard one of the Wi-Fi guys talk about precursors to those of us who have become sensitive. One, it could be physical trauma, car accident, I've had that, chemical, had mercury in my mouth, the aluminum from the chemtrails. I also was exposed to mold. That's what crashed in the workplace. That's what crashed my immune system back in the 90s, which led to a weakened immune system. And the continued exposure. I got rid of what I could. A microwave was the first thing to go. I encourage you, if you are not ready to make the decision because you have not looked at all the information on both sides, I encourage you to protect us and do the right thing. Don't just pass this on. It was a bad idea to begin with in New Mexico, and it continues to be a bad idea. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your comment.
And next, Kevin Lorenzen. Go ahead, Kevin.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. Yeah, so my name is Kevin Lorenzen. I am actually a retired engineer. I worked for Motorola in their RF wafer fab back when they rolled out cell phones on September 21st of 1983. So they've been affecting us for 41 years, and we know the data indicate that cell phones, RF radiation, cell towers, smart devices, they are all damaging us. My particular situation and my background here is that my wife was diagnosed with EHS approximately 4 years ago, and she displayed all of the symptoms that were described earlier by the speakers. She had to file for disability and left a very large semiconductor manufacturing position with a company here in Rio Rancho, and I think you all know who it is. So she was exposed for nearly 24 years to excessive technology. She is now on disability and she has not left our community. Fortunately, we live in Placitas, so there are very, very few cell towers, none near our house. But she has not been able to leave our community in over 4 years due to her EHS. And again, once you're exposed, all you can do is remove yourself from the exposure in order to get any type of relief. But this is not where you can take a pill to recover from it. It's really analogous to being affected by the sunshine. So whereas the last speaker said that not everybody is affected, I beg to differ. Everybody is affected. They're just not necessarily displaying the symptoms that would make them go seek medical attention, or they're not getting affected to the degree that it's impacting their lives. But I can tell you that this has impacted our lives significantly. We did have a smart meter that was installed without our approval on our gas line previously, and we had to opt out of that because it was affecting my wife significantly. It was pulsing approximately every 12 seconds. And I have meters and I know how to use them. I have an RF meter, electrical meter, magnetic meter, dirty electricity meter. And I can tell you that we put the meter near the smart meter that was on the gas line and it was pegging the meter. So it was over 3 million microwatts per square meter. 0.1 is a safe number. So it was 30 million times more dangerous to her body than it should have been. We've removed that smart meter. We've removed all of our smart devices in our house. We have no TVs, no microwaves. We got rid of our thermostat, disabled our washer and dryer from its signal. And so just need to let people know that all of these devices, all of this technology is literally killing people. And if you consider two people sitting on the beach, one who might be an African American that's not going to get sunburned, and you take an Irishman who has very little melatonin in his skin, the same 8 hours in the sun is going to give somebody sunburn and not the other one. When you look at the radio frequency radiation, it's completely analogous to that. Some people may not be affected in displaying symptoms, but they are being affected by it. It's just a matter of time before it has a major impact on them. So when I walk out in my street, I can access 8 different Wi-Fi signals, literally in our front street. So we are not able to protect her even going outside. And again, you can take another analogy and talk about smoking. So decades ago, after 5 decades of lying from big tobacco, we understand that tobacco was causing cancer. And so we created no smoking areas. Well, we should probably create no Wi-Fi areas, right? No cell phone areas in order to protect the people who are impacted by this. I also adamantly propose, yes, reject PNM's request due to irreparable health effects for my wife and other New Mexicans. Thank you for your time.
Great, thank you. Thank you for your comment. Do we have anyone else, Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Douglas Bailey. If you're there, Douglas, go ahead.
This is Douglas Bailey. Do you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Bailey, go ahead with your comment.
Yes, I concur with the previous speakers, and I implore you to turn whatever from P&M being able to just install smart meters on homes, businesses, etc. The damage is going to be irreparable to those of us that suffer from RF radiation. This is a problem that I suffer with and have turned off all of the Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, etc. in my home so that I connect to the internet via Ethernet cable, hardwire. And I implore you to not permit P&M to install smart meters anywhere in the state of New Mexico for the health and welfare of all New Mexico residents. It is despicable that we're still having to discuss this problem when time and time again New Mexicans have voiced their fears of smart meters, and P&M has not provided any health and welfare assurances that the meters that they will be installing are safe to residents. We need some assurances before any of this happens. We need some environmental impact statements run. We need to know that what we've seen visually from installations of smart meters where vegetation is dead, birds are gone, and it's a mess. So I implore you, please, do not permit P&M to install smart meters in New Mexico. I thank you for your time. I appreciate the opportunity to testify. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment today.
Mr. Chair, that's it for commenters online.
Thank you. So that concludes the public comment session portion of the agenda. So we'll move on. Excuse me. The meeting began at the posted time and we took, yes, they have. And we took the folks in the room who were here when the meeting started. I wasn't aware that you were here because like I said, we had a process where we included everybody who was in the room when the meeting started. To give me my 3 minutes. I don't think it will be if you're willing to live within the 3 minutes.
I think so.
Okay, so can you please sit down at the microphone?
I would prefer to stand, please.
Well, this meeting's being live streamed around the world, so it's better for the folks who are participating in this meeting if you could sit.
Thank you. You may use today's audio of the permitted minutes for the sole purpose of posting in context of the entirety of today's session for the general public. Otherwise, generally, my personal data, including metadata, is my private property. It may not be collected, stored, shared, sold, and or otherwise utilized unless with written permission. I expressly reserve all rights, past, present, future, and in perpetuity. US patent number 11,804,394 B1 titled Systems and Methods for Covertly Creating Adverse Health Effects in Subjects. I will leave it to the judgment of independent, uncorrupted technicians whether this pulse modulated frequency method might be an executable dual use application by so-called smart meters. Be it as it may, the following should be considered essentially notice, not regarding mere comment. Any careful enough observer of this proceeding can identify the plentiful violations of due process and actions effectively silencing the opposition, Mr. Ryan. As enumerated in the filings of New Mexicans for Utility Safety's President Arthur Furstenberg, who I wish to commend for his very tiresome, exhausting, yet brilliant work. The most egregious violation of all being the deliberate, willful exclusion of the one thing that most agree is precious and indeed essential to all of us, our health. And since no health survey, review, assessment, or the like has been undertaken, not in the New Mexico legislature, nor elsewhere in local government proceedings in regards to radio frequency harms, therefore and universally, no amount of rationalizing and lawfaring the preservation of our health and very life out of the equation is acceptable. the circumstance that this unconscionable, biased, rigged sham of a proceeding, repugnant to the very nature of any unspoiled being, has been allowed to be conducted in the injurious way that it has, for going on to be very soon 2 years soon, while paying all of you for it. That alone, I contend, is already an economic waste in very violation of the Public Utility Act, barring any further execution. Not to mention environmental impact of production, maintenance, and disposal of an infrastructure that fundamentally harms life. Further, the fact that hearing examiner Christopher Ryan has been allowed to conduct this proceeding to the persistent, willful, unconscionable, and unacceptable exclusion of the massive body of evidence of the harmful effects of radio frequency irradiation on biology in peer-reviewed academic literature and beyond, means to me that the commissioners themselves, I believe, are biased toward an outcome that will cause great harm.
So
Do
you
you?
began by saying you would respect the 3 minutes. You're at 4 now. Could you please
I'm ending.
conclude it?
Would you agree? Do you agree, Commissioner O'Connell, that you do not owe us the protection of our health and safety?
I appreciate you coming here today and providing your public comment. Thank you.
That is an essential question. I believe that is just a simple yes and no and can be answered very quickly. Do you owe us protection of ourselves? And I'm asking each commissioner individually, please. Do you owe us the protection of our health and very safety, please? Mr. O'Connell.
This is a forum for accepting public comment. It's not a forum for debate or questioning of commissioners.
Situation in itself is just further evidence that you don't have our backs and that you're not really protecting us. And therefore, I want to close in saying to each of you, Mr. Ellison, Mr. O'Connell, and Mr. Aguilera, you are fired, by the way, Mr. Ryan. You're fired. And to each of you,
I'm not Mr. Ryan.
saying right now that your main purpose must be and shall be the preservation of health and life. If you don't see yourself required, so this must be and shall be done, and so be it. Do no harm is what it must be and shall be. Thank you very much.
Again, thank you for coming and providing your comment today. I believe that is the end of our public comment session. So thanks again to everyone who availed themselves of that opportunity today and of the previous sessions that we've had. So at this moment, we'll move on with our agenda as posted. We're at the announcements section. Mr. Reddy Martinez, did you have any announcements?
Nothing from OGC, Mr. Chair.
Great, thank you. I just quickly wanted to remind folks that we're going to deviate from our normal schedule of bi-weekly meetings in the holiday season. So the meeting that would normally occur on November 28th is going to occur on November 26th. And the meeting that would normally occur on December 26th is going to occur on December 19th. And then we've got one bit of business on the agenda before welcoming Senator Munoz. And that is approval of prior meeting minutes. We have a set of minutes for September 19th, regular open meeting in our book. Commissioner, did you have any changes or comments?
Chairman, I do not have any changes to the draft minutes. Thank you. I don't either. Thank you.
Okay, and then I, again, did some typo edits in Board Effect. So mostly it's problems with the acronyms we use. So anyway, I don't have any changes other than those typo edits. So I will move that we accept the September 2019-2024 regular open meeting minutes that are in board effect.
I second.
Mr. Reddick Martinez.
Commissioner Ellison. Aye. Commissioner O'Connell.
Aye.
Commissioner Aguilar.
Aye.
The motion to approve the minutes for the September 19, 2024 regular open meeting passes unanimously, Mr. Chair.
Great, thank you. Now I'd like to welcome Senator George Munoz. Welcome, Senator. Looking forward to your presentation today, and you have the floor, sir.
Do I need the?
Yeah, you gotta go to.
So just with the speakers. Good morning. Thank you for having me, and it's interesting. I'm glad we're getting you a new building. That's the first thing, so you can have a real commission chambers and move forward. And first of all, I want to appreciate your service. You guys at the PRC, I don't think we really recognize what all you have to deal with. And so as you guys have changed the face of the PRC, I'll speak for myself and maybe part of the legislature, maybe the whole legislature, that I think you've changed the way the PRC has become, and it's upgraded immensely. So thank you for doing that. I appreciate that. I think wherever I go throughout committee meetings and talk throughout the legislature, we talk about reliability and resilience in our utility system. Those are words that political presidential candidates are using through hardening the system, building resilience. How do we do that? And how do we do that in New Mexico? And how do we raise the awareness and emphasize the emergency and present a vision of how we're going to do that? You at the PRC, I think, are going to have to lead us in that direction. But there's topics that you need to know that are coming through that are going to be dealt with in the session. Upgrading our electrical grid and expanding access to enhance economic development in New Mexico, attracting businesses and investors in New Mexico. I love to use, or I may only use because I may have the most knowledge about it, is Mesa del Sol, who has a solar company moving in, but doesn't have the investment in the substations to do that. How are we going to help them develop? How are we going to help Southeast New Mexico develop? How are we going to help microgrids become a thing of the future? And that's in your hands. The legislature, I think, will invest in modernizing our grid, improving integration in renewable energy sources, and how do we boost our reliability and support the overall success of the state through the PRC, through the legislature, through the governor's office. We're all in this together. This is a factor that has to be dealt with throughout. Utilities, and some will be my friends and some will be my enemies when they come to the session. They'll be facing pressures to expand quickly, to expand their renewable portfolios and to meet the milestones set by the ETA. Those are things that they have to meet. PNM has not met some of those in their solar grid. They've tried and failed and I think have given up, but they need to continue that. We need to explore behind the meter investments. Companies and residents need to be integrated into the grid and do it collaboratively as New Mexico's electrification needs. New Mexico talks about economic development, and the deputy director from the economic development is here. We've had long conversations with them. They all have bills with electric companies about exploring and increasing substations and increasing the grid. But we know that those won't happen without big investments. A major substation is 120 million. I may not be the best knowledge, but that's what I've been told. $120 million a piece. And is PNM, is Excel, is the co-ops willing to invest that into New Mexico to harden and to add reliability and resilience? I don't know if they are, but I think I am. And we're going to explore that very hard with your help. Professional experiences regarding construction and implementation in that process is going to be key, how we draft legislation and how we move forward. With a vision in the PRC as the key government agency that can identify constrained areas on the grids, residential and commercial, and targeting these areas for energy resources is going to be critical as we move forward. Community solar initiatives are valuable assets that we should be building throughout New Mexico. Yep, we have no integration into the system. including microgrids, and it's a failure that we need to address throughout New Mexico. Energy generation and distribution needs to be expanded throughout New Mexico, with the PRC playing the key role and pivotal role in an active leadership in how we do that. I am not an expert on electrical, anything 110, 220, 440. It is my experience as a contractor but megawatts and kilowatts may add a lot of confusion and I don't know what goes beyond that, but I know that we need to change New Mexico. So with that, I think we have a conversation about how we do that in New Mexico and what it really costs. You are the experts. I really truly believe that you are the experts. You have the knowledge, you have the skill set. You know where we should head. You hear testimony every day and you see a lot of cases. So how can the state directly invest in utilities and utility infrastructure? I pose that as a question. I mean, if you don't know the answer, I mean, we can explore it, but I think these are things that we have to do. And should the state consider building substation and transmission throughout the state on their own to lower costs to consumers, because the utility will not be able to recover the infrastructure costs. And so as the state may invest in these or partner hand in hand, and how do we invest and recover those, right? Given that utilities are constrained by load factors, how do we increase their load factors throughout? I mean, where are they going to get the energy from? Is it community solar that builds that increase? Where are we going to get the power from? People don't realize there's a limited supply of power every day. It just matters how much is on the grid. Is there a hazard in sharing the model to the state to invest in utility infrastructures, enabling utilities to expand more rapidly into the future? And I think time is of the essence. And how do we push in that direction? I don't imagine there's too many 120 million megawatt substations lying around in the US, maybe one or two. They're probably in Florida. And so how do we avoid those natural disasters and how to prepare for the changing environment that we're in, whether it's a wildfire in Las Vegas, a wildfire in Ruidoso? Are we prepared for those, and do we have the power to put them back in? And the other thing that comes to factor is, how do we not overbuild, right? How do we build and expand at a rate where we don't over exceed what we have in infrastructure compared to what we can power? And what are the barriers that really hinder rapid growth? Because if you talk to anybody throughout New Mexico, from the schools in Silver City to Eddy and Lee County in the oil and gas industry, to economic development in Albuquerque, to Gallup, to Farmington, we lost our power station. How do we ensure that we can do this rapid? And what does that look like? How can we address these? And these are key questions I have no answers to, but I think that you do, you have the knowledge. And are there examples in other states and regions that have been successfully implemented, and that we can innovate our electrical strategies, and where can we learn from and how we can do those? I think as we move forward in the session, if you just look at committee agendas, economic development had 2 or 3 electrification issues in the last 2 days. LFC has begun talking about some of these. Natural Resources is talking about these throughout the 27 or plus legislative committees. There's not a question about how we do this. How do we expand UNM's doctors, knowing that we're going to build them a $500 million building and we're going to have the power to do that? Those are things that I think we need you to help us answer and give us a dollar amount to do that.
Great, thank you. Appreciate the presentation today, and I think as a group we're aware that this is a big topic. It's been, and that it is especially a big topic at the upcoming legislature session. So we've been trying to prepare to be included in the conversation in a positive way to help New Mexico move forward. So again, that's what our intention here is. And then I think the other point is that and you said it, we have a role to play in this, that we need to expand in a way that we still continue to do our job, affordable and reliable and avoid waste and duplication and that kind of stuff. So I'll just give you my 2 cents and let my fellow commissioners weigh in on this too. We've been trying to catch up and get to a point where we're synced up with the conversation so we can contribute productively. So just the last open meeting, we opened a forum just so utilities can come and tell us what they're looking at, what pressures they're facing, so that we can be prepared to act quickly when that moment comes. And then your first question about how do these things happen? There are analogies that exist within regulation of how to deal with investments that are paid for by customers or other entities. So we're happy to help with that. And then what you're talking about is sits within this bigger conversation. Like we're going to San Diego next week, and it'll be a huge part of the bigger conversation. The whole country is trying to figure out how can we expand the use of electricity. And your observation about Florida was, I'm hoping not right on, but it might well be right that the transformers that are out there are going to replace transformers that just got wiped out. So that's just another challenge. But yeah, thank you for coming today. Very happy to hear from you in this forum. Promise that we're working to help you do your job, and we all want a better future for New Mexico. So anything else?
Well, I think my comments will not be dissimilar, but Senator, thank you for coming here and taking the time to be here. And I think you're at the right place with this conversation. And I think you're exactly right. The grid is at a pivotal point, and not just because of the energy transition, also because the grid was largely designed decades ago, for what we needed decades ago. And it just so happened that for a long time, we could integrate new loads, and it wasn't a big deal. But now anywhere you try to integrate any substantial load, and even in some cases, small loads, it requires expensive upgrades. And so, our challenge is, how are we going to help the grid accommodate these large loads to meet the energy transition and to help economic development while keeping rates affordable. You want nice things, you got to pay for them. And you coming to talk about this, and it really is music to our ears, I think, because this is a potential solution, as I see it, to the affordability, reliability, and modernizing the grid and expanding it to accommodate new loads can all be done, and it's expensive. So I think we certainly are here to help in this conversation. As the chairman noted, we opened a docket at the last meeting to identify areas where economic development is being pursued. And that's, a proactive way to make sure that the grid is ready. Commissioner Ellison, I could let him talk more about this, but he's leading one of our dockets that has to do with distribution planning. And so that's collectively getting together with stakeholders to figure out the optimal places to invest in the grid. And so, as the chairman mentioned, there are examples out there with grants and loans and different financial mechanisms to get this done while ensuring that it is fair for ratepayers. Excuse me, that they're not, paying twice by, paying into taxes and then also paying their electric bill. And so there are methods to figure out, what is fair for the utility and for customers. So, we're happy to continue to talk about this.
Yeah, I'll give you the perfect example where I live. The city supplies power. And they may buy at 6 cents. And they have to mark up for operational. And they may sell it to us in the city for 18 cents. I live outside the city. I pay 36 cents. That's probably the highest in the state compared to California for a double digit. Not a lot of people can do that. So how do we keep the costs low?
Senator, appreciate your remarks today, and I certainly appreciate the ability to give some input into the legislative process. I did, just want to add that in the southeastern part of the state, in the oil patch, it seems like there's one set of issues because these oil producers want to electrify their operations so quickly that the issue really seems to be on the bulk power supply, how to get enough power generation. Whereas in PNM and El Paso, it seems to be at least in some of the research parks, a little more on the distribution side. And currently, our process is such that we're not reviewing distribution plans, and we're not approving specific distribution projects. So, I personally don't think there's an issue with the PRC hindering some of this work. But, I do think it's plausible that, utilities may not want to build in hopes that some company is going to come, because it would be on their books and it would be an asset that all ratepayers would have to pay for. But I think that's a really valuable conversation to have, how to be, responsive to businesses wanting to move at the state, while at the same time protecting our ratepayers. And I think in this inquiry docket, we're really going to explore those types of questions.
Well, we want to be hand in hand. I mean, if you look at Southeast New Mexico, and we all say, we're reliant on one revenue stream, and that's oil and gas. In Carlsbad, they're exploring a cardboard recycling plant, which is a high energy use, but which also take produced water. So as we build this system out, a data center in there, which is high water use and high power use. And so how do we economically develop areas that could be affected if there's downturns in the economy, or how do we expand? I mean, the solar plant in Albuquerque, I think we're going to rely on your guidance in how we do that. And if the electric companies are worried about the state trying to force something down them, I think this is hand in hand, right? You don't want to invest, but we do. New Mexico has been known as a poor state, but we're not poor anymore. And so if we really want to win in the economic development game, in the education game, in leading power and hardening and reliance and reliability, New Mexico needs to invest. And me as a legislator and one of 112 truly believe that maybe not all private investment should come that way. If they're going to do speculation, I'm a contractor, and sure, I'm not going to spend $1 million if I don't know, then I'm not going to have income coming later. But why can't the state help do that for you and assume that, and not lay it on the taxpayer in a rate increase later on? And so those are things that we have to figure out, working with industry. Commissioner Ellison, I know your time is up and you're up for reappointment. I just want to make this publicly known that I want to support you. I think you've done a great job, you as a team, and we have stability. I think when we change from one to the next, we don't know who that's going to be or what that's going to look like, but you guys, all three of you, create that stability. And so I would urge the executive, and I'll be writing them a letter on your behalf, and you may want to review it before I send it, saying that I support your reappointment, and I think it's very important that we have stability in the PRC as we move forward.
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate those comments.
Thank you again. Thanks for coming in. Conversation.
We will not defund your position in the legislature. So no matter who hires you or fires you, it's up to these three gentlemen. So thank you for your time today, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Again, thank you, Senator. Next on the agenda is consent action items. We have a number of cases on the consent agenda. 8 in total. Commissioners, did you have any discussion or questions about items on the consent agenda?
No, thank you.
Neither do I, thank you.
Right, so then I will move for approval of the proposed orders on the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Mr. Reddick Martinez.
Commissioner Ellison.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Connell.
Aye.
Commissioner Aguilera.
Aye.
The motion to approve the items on the consent agenda passes unanimously, Mr. Chair.
First up on the regular action agenda is case number 2400176 UT. It's EPE's application for approval of their 2025 Renewable Energy Act plan. Mr. Gidko. And would you mind turning? Yeah, there we go.
Good morning. The matter before you, case number 2400176, is the matter of the application for approval of El Paso Electric Company's Renewable Energy Act plan for 2025 and the 8th revised rate number 38 RPS cost rider. This matter concerns EPE's 2025 Renewable Energy Act plan, the 2026 next year plan that was filed, the 8th revised rate number 38, as I mentioned, as well as EPE, as part of that filing, is required to file their 2023 annual renewable energy portfolio report. EPE's requests in this docket were unopposed and the hearing was vacated. So what is before the commission is a proposed order approving EPE's requests by adopting the recommended decision with slight modifications. A few items of note. This 2025 plan is the first plan year in which the RPS, Renewable Portfolio Standard requirement, is increased to 40%. It was previously 20%. To accomplish this standard, EPE has requested approval to continue to reallocate the Buena Vista 1 project and initiate a reallocation of a portion of the Macho Springs project from Texas to New Mexico. That new reallocation would be done at the rate of the Carne project, which is part of the cause for this reallocation due to its delay in COD until August of 2025. EPE is proposing an increase in the RPS cost rider. It is a 79% increase, which is reflective of the change in the RPS standard of 20 to 40%. And that has a resulting average effect on residential bills of between 7 and 8.5%, depending on the season of the year. Theoretically, due to the reassignments, there should be offsetting decreases in fuel purchases, market purchases, and reduced capital needs, though some of those reductions might not be realized until a future rate case. Another item of note is that the 2023 report showed a deficit in required renewable energy certificate retirements, as EPE was able to retire only approximately 16.11%, whereas 20% was required. In 2023, EPE had filed for interim relief, which was denied due to an appeal that was pending at the Supreme Court. That appeal the opinion has been issued, though a mandate has not been issued. The appeal was in the favor of the commission, as you will hear about elsewhere, but it does open the door to dealing with that 2023 deficit in future proceedings. Finally, there's the one modification from the recommended decision is to the statement that if a project is a renewable energy paired with an energy storage PPA, then the reasonable cost threshold is based on both the project's net present value energy and capacity costs for the entire term divided by its expected net present value energy for the entire term. In a previous case, 2293-UT, the commission had considered round-trip energy losses, and therefore the definition that was provided in the recommended decision should not be adopted as is. And however, it is not necessary to consider it overly heavily, as there are not new resources being applied for in this filing that require the application of one definition to the other. Therefore, it has simply been removed from the recommended decision. Apart from those three issues, the rest of the issues have been covered in the recommended decision, which I know you have reviewed. The 2025 plan, the 2026 next year plan, and the 2023 report satisfy the requirements of the statute, relevant rules, and prior commission orders, and should be approved. So for these reasons, I recommend the commission adopt the proposed final order adopting recommended decision with modifications, and I stand for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gitko. Commissioners, did you have any questions or discussion on this item?
One question, Mr. Gitko, you stated that, given the higher allocation of renewables to New Mexico customers, there should be certain costs that would drop, such as the fuel and purchase power adjustment clause, correct?
Correct.
And would we necessarily need to wait for a rate case to see lower costs in that particular item?
In the fuel clause, no. Theoretically, due to the reliance upon these renewable facilities, the need to purchase fuel to serve gas turbines, for example, should be reduced, and the effects of that should be seen immediately. It would be more in capacity issues, for example, of resources not being so necessary due to the implementation of more renewable resources, that in a rate case, lowered capacity could result in a lowering of rates per chance.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or discussion?
Well, I'll just, maybe emphasize what Mr. Getko said. You know, I think that we have a situation here where there is a reallocation of some resources that are necessarily displacing other resources. And so I think what the order is doing is notifying parties that this is something that should be considered in a future case, because if you're in with capacity, especially, I think is where this is difficult to understand. And so maybe it was not appropriate to address in this case. Maybe it was. In any case, it wasn't, but it's offsetting some capacity. And so what I want to make sure is that New Mexicans are not paying for the capacity that is being reallocated and paying for the capacity that is being displaced. So that's what I wanted to discuss. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Both good points. I didn't have any other questions or discussion on this. And so.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to mention one other thing. I appreciated EPE's proposal here for 2025. I think that they've done the right thing here by continuing the Buena Vista reassignment and with the Macho Springs reassignment and really recognizing the importance of meeting the RPS mandate going forward. So I just like to commend them for putting forth a good proposal here.
Said. So on that note, I'll move the proposed final order in this case.
I second.
Mr. Reddick Martinez.
Commissioner Ellison.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Connell.
Aye.
Commissioner Aguilera.
Aye.
The motion to approve the proposed order passes unanimously, Mr. Chair.
Great. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Gecko. Next on the agenda is case number 220058 UT. That's P&M's grid modernization application. We'll start with a presentation from Mr. Lundin.
Good morning, commissioners. So today I have for your consideration a final order in the docket you just described, P&M's grid mod application. P&M's application was filed a little over 2 years ago, seeking approval of 6 years worth of grid modernization investments to modernize its electrical grid, and estimated cost approximately $344 million. The presiding officer's RD was issued in mid-August, recommending that the commission largely approve P&M's application with some minor modifications and some conditions of approval. OGC's recommended final order would adopt the RD with modification and additional clarification. The modifications would be to remove the conditions of approval and to accept several of the exceptions filed by the Water Utility Authority, NMPRC, Bernalillo County, and the New Mexico Department of Justice. The final order would also further clarify which costs are being approved and which costs would gain a presumption of reasonableness going forward. There is also an alternative final order for your consideration today. The alternative was prepared by Commissioner Ellison and his advisor with my assistance, and it differs from the OG recommendation in a few important ways. The alternative would additionally not adopt the RD's recommendations on the scope of the grid mod plan, aligning instead with the NMDOJ proposal to approve a 4-year plan, and the opt-out fees, again aligning with the proposal of the NMDOJ to have a reduced monthly opt-out fee. Further, the alternative would come to a different conclusion on the presumption of reasonableness, as does the OGC recommendation. Now I understand that at least one of the commissioners would rather conduct this discussion and vote on an issue by issue basis rather than looking at it as one order versus the other. I propose we heed that request, but perhaps we should start with the OGC recommended order and amend it as desired, working from there as a base point. So I stand for questioning.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Yeah, my idea was let's go ahead and start with an order and then work through potential amendments. I had a list of amendments that we might want to talk through, and your three were on that list. So I recommend that we start with those three. So that's the 6-year versus 4-year plan, the rebuttable presumption of reasonableness, and then the opt-out fee. Then Commissioner Ellison, were there other things that you think we should work through on that list of potential amendments?
Well, I certainly think those are the major ones. I think we could talk about the grid mod rider rate, although I don't differ from what the let's call it the order we're working off of here is holding. I'm not sure if you mentioned whether the grid mod rider would be a fixed per customer fee versus a volumetric fee, but that's certainly one that I wanted to discuss. And there's a minor sentence insertion in paragraph 44 that we might discuss about the Engineering and Surveying Act. So
Yeah, as we go along it and you want to add to that list, we certainly can, but go ahead and get started. So
Chairman, may I make a comment? I may be able to pare this list down a little bit. So to clarify, I believe both the OGC recommended order and the alternative order would clarify that the grid mod rider charge is a fixed per customer charge, not a volumetric.
Okay,
does that help reduce?
Sure. If we want to talk about it, we can, but I'm happy with the fixed per customer recovery. I think that's the right way to go. So we don't have to.
great, thank you. And then just have a order to discuss as foundation for amendments. I'll move that we adopt what's been referred to as the OGC recommended order.
I second.
Okay, so then procedurally, next step is we're in discussion on the motion that's on the floor. And so entertaining any potential amendments to the order that's been moved. I think we should start with the 6-year versus 4-year idea. And then personally, I think that kind of bleeds into a discussion about rebuttable presumption of reasonableness, but we'll see. And so go ahead and if anyone would like to amend from approval of a 6-year to a 4-year, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That was one of the key elements behind the second order, but I I do think it's better to have this format where we're working off of the OGC recommended order and going issue by issue. So I have a few reasons for supporting the DOJ's position on this. I think one of them is that it certainly can be argued that the grid modernization statute does give a presumption of reasonableness to projects and project costs that are approved by the PRC. And I think the best way to have more oversight and control on spending is to really approve the projects and budgets that are most immediate and most necessary. And I would argue that AMI centric plan does that. A lot of these distribution automation investments are extending well beyond the 6 years of this program, whereas the AMI investments are pretty much done at the end of year 4. So, we're really being asked to approve programs that, are just starting in this period. So we kind of, it's kind of hard to start something and then say, no, we don't think that's a good idea in years 7 through 11. So in a lot of ways, even though PNM is not asking for an 11-year program here, if we approve their 6-year plan, we're sort of, buying into what they want to do for the entire 11 years. And, I think the costs are more uncertain as you go out. And I would not propose to say, we don't want to see those projects at all. It would be, that we would just say we would deny those without prejudice at this time, and that the company is free to reapply for those, but that, we would like to see the entire rollout of those projects analyzed, not just, a couple of years of those projects. I just think we'd have more control over the spending, and I don't see great harm in proceeding in that way.
Thank you for that. Commissioner Aguilera, did you have anything you wanted to say about 4 versus 6? I have a few things if you don't. But.
Yes, I think that what I see in the 4-year plan is that it shifts spending to later, but doesn't necessarily save ratepayers any money. I think it's putting off some of these decisions to approve some programs without providing certainty to the utility as to their plan, and also without providing certainty to ratepayers that many of these benefits will actually come to fruition. I think that the 6-year plan that was presented by the utility is reasonable, subject to the other modifications that we might have here, but it is reasonable and also strikes the right balance between VRD, which on one hand is saying, let's do this faster, and some of the parties who are saying, let's approve a smaller plan now and then, continue to talk about it. I think that the 6-year plan also helps in that it avoids litigating some of the issues that were litigated here. And I think that, yeah, so those are my thoughts for now. I think largely, I think the 4-year plan creates some uncertainty, and I'm not convinced that it would actually save ratepayers money. It actually is putting off some of the decisions until a later time.
Yeah, I would have to say I agree with the concern that just putting off decisions later might defeat the idea of trying to get the benefits in an integrated way. I mean, one thing that I see in the DOJ proposal is it's boils it down to 4 years of spending and boils it down to AMI. So what are we saying by saying we're not going to include money for using AMI to help with things like distribution planning? That's one concern I have. And then the other is I have tremendous respect for Andrea Crane as a witness, and I wholeheartedly agree with the concept that let's spend the least amount of money to get the most benefit as possible. But for me, that's a financial argument. It isn't, she's not the most credible witness on how to put together an integrated suite of benefits, because she's just not an operator of the system. So anyway, just curious, I was surprised that you wanted that, because it zeroes out some things I know you're passionate about, like distribution planning.
Right. I do think that, the company has argued that the data available from the AMI, from the smart meters will be of help in distribution planning and hosting capacity analysis in and of itself. That and I do think the company has distribution modeling software that they could put to use the availability of all that AMI data. So I don't think that this plan would sort of get rid of the benefits that you would get from having that additional AMI data. I guess another concern I have is that the company asserted that the DERMS, the distributed energy management system, was really needed, and the IVVM, the integrated volt bar management, to add to hosting capacity for distributed solar. And none of the interveners really challenged that on a technical level, or looked at, what might be some other alternatives, such as maybe just expanding the capacity on a feeder or adding another feeder. So, there wasn't, a lot of technical discussion. Their witness, Courtney Lane, did comment on PNM's Flisser plan and compared it to SPS, whereas SPS, their plan was to put Flisser on roughly 8% of their feeders that are the worst performing in terms of reliability. P&M's plan appears to be to put it on every feeder, regardless of reliability performance. Another issue with this DERMS is that it's the ability to control devices, but you have to have something to control. So right now we've approved a couple of large substation batteries. I know that it could control distributed solar, but you'd have to have advanced inverters. It wouldn't be able to control legacy solar installations to my knowledge. So we're sort of being asked to approve it without, I think, seeing the whole picture and what's the cost of putting batteries in every substation, if that is indeed the goal. So I think there is some value to having some additional scrutiny on is this truly the least cost path forward.
So my understanding is there will be an annual review of costs, and I think an annual check-in gives us opportunity to ask exactly those questions that you're describing. So do you disagree with that?
Well, I guess that it depends on our answer to sort of the second issue, which I think we might as well talk about some here. The way the OGC recommended order handles it is that the commission explicitly approves the cost only of year one, and presumably every year we would approve the cost of the project for the next year. And what concerns me about that approach is that in the RD we only have the estimated P&M statement of the estimated project amount. I'm not sure if under the grid mod statute that would be considered an approved cost, because the grid mod statute talks about costs approved by the commission are deemed reasonable. So is P&M statement of their estimated cost, is that the same as the approved cost? So I guess my thinking is I would like to tighten this cost element down a little bit and either explicitly state that we're giving approval for the entire project cost, whether that be for the 4-year or the 6-year program, or in advance we're approving the cost for each of the 4 or the 6 years, because otherwise it feels like the cost could just be whatever in each year, and the company might be waiting around for us to determine what the cost cap is in the next year, which doesn't seem to be very, very efficient either.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for that clarification. My initial understanding of this is the proposal was rebuttable presumption on a 6-year cost for a 4-year plan, which made no sense to me at all. But again, going back to the idea that we're gonna have an annual review. And then my experience with what rebuttable presumption means in an IRP setting, for example, which is if you did a plan and you said, I need a power plant, you don't have to argue about whether you need a power plant when you come in. What you have to argue about is, did I do the best job of building that power plant? And so context, one of the things was the presentation you brought to the grid mod rulemaking, which was when is benefit cost analysis the right thing to do, and when is least cost best fit the best thing to do. One of my takeaways from that was we made the right choice in ordering a benefit cost analysis as part of the initial plan filing or application, because we do have that responsibility of reasonableness. But for then it's okay, we're on this path. Are you doing the best thing on that path? That's when least cost best fit fits in. And again, we get to look at that every year, which might actually be too often, right? Because these are big projects, they're going to require procurements and those type of things. So I don't see, first of all, whatever we approve 4 or 6 year, if we're going to do a rebuttable presumption, if it doesn't match the time frame, then all we're doing is confusing the issue. And then in both cases, I think the annual review is the more powerful tool to achieve what I've heard you're attempting to accomplish than parsing the plan now.
Yeah, and I'll just add that that annual review is also part of what I think this makes this plan reasonable, is that it's a plan, right? It's looking forward. I don't see this as approving everything right now. And I think that's maybe what the 4-year plan is trying to say, is that, we can wait. But I think this 6-year plan includes intermediate steps, milestones, and, regular check-ins, not just with the utility and the regulator, but with other stakeholders having to say. And so that's part of what I think is makes this plan, at a high level, reasonable and acceptable.
Right. Well, I'm not quite sure if we're saying the same thing here, but I do think whatever we approve, we are approving those projects. And as I see it, we're really, we're really approving the cost estimate for those projects. And I guess what I'm saying is I would rather just come out and do that explicitly rather than, leave it unclear. Just say, we're approving, if it's the 6-year program, we're approving this 344 million figure as a reasonable cost for these programs. And if and the real purpose in my mind of the annual is we're setting the grid mod rider on an annual basis, and so we want the grid mod rider to match the spend in that year. But if the company is able to, say, accelerate some part of the plan, we don't want to prevent them from doing that. We don't want to say, oh, you have a cap of $9 million in year one, don't exceed it, don't go faster. I don't think that's what we're trying to do here. We want to have a cap for the the entire investment project. And if the company goes over, then, they do not have a rebuttable presumption of reasonableness on those amounts that exceed what we've approved. But, from year to year, we're going to be assessing their progress and, how their spending is matching what they said it would be. But, we're not necessarily constraining them on a year-to-year basis. At least that's how I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, I guess one of the things that I'm afraid of is this whole conversation assumes costs are going up. My experience with planning is when you've got a plan, you're making estimates, but when you get into it, you can find opportunities for synergy, optimization, you name it, and you can end up being less than what the plan was. This doesn't account for that. And then rebuttable presumption isn't approval. It's you get to start the runner on second base. Whether it gets to home plate or not is not a given. So I would rather not give the utilities a number that says, hey, you can spend all the way up to this number. I want them to always be thinking, can I do better than this number for my customers? And I think this concept muddies that communication.
The one thing that I would add to that is that, and Commissioner Elgin, you mentioned something that is one thing that I did not agree with in the alternate order is this idea of a cap. I don't think this is creating a cap and preventing them from spending more. I think this is approving an estimate for the purpose of this rebuttable presumption, and so that we know, so that we have a solid idea of what the utility is doing. But I don't think of it as a cap. I think that if it is prudent that they do something earlier, they will have an opportunity to implement a program earlier and then demonstrate later why it was prudent to do so.
Okay, I guess, what I'm looking at is, when I look at the language of the grid mod statute, costs that are no greater than the amount approved by the commission for utility grid modernization project are presumed to be reasonable. So what costs are we approving here?
And that's the whole concept of rebuttable presumption. If they come in with a filing that says we did the best job that's possible to implement year one of the plan, and the costs are higher than what we had here, then they're going to have to argue for higher than that number with a different standard than the base. The rebuttable presumption is the base was reasonable. But if on the other hand, they come in and say, hey, we did better than that number, we're not going to approve the number that is deemed reasonable. We're going to approve what it actually cost, which is a lower number.
Okay, well, I guess, yeah, I'm more concerned about costs going up than dropping in it. And I see that if we approve a number, whatever it is a cap, and anything below that is great as long as all the programs are accomplished. I
don't read that's what reasonable means in the law. It's the opposite of that. If we approve a number, then they get that number, even if they could do it for cheaper. Because we've said now that number is reasonable. So that's the lack of symmetry that bothers me with this.
Well, I guess, it leaves me really unclear, what we're approving here, because we're approving programs, but in that order, in the OGC order, we're just approving year one costs. And obviously you cannot accomplish a 6-year, $344 million program on 6-year costs. So I think the company would have an argument to say we've approved these programs, and maybe we didn't approve any costs because they just gave us an estimate, and the cost it could be a lot higher than this if we're just going on a year by year basis. So I guess I would like to hear maybe a suggestion that would help me feel more comfortable here that we're not just writing a blank check for this program.
I think for me anyway, that suggestion's built into the RD, which is the annual review.
And I think the rebuttable presumption is also creating a threshold that makes me feel comfortable. I mean, I think anything over that, the utility is going to have to demonstrate that they are prudent costs and that they're just and reasonable. At the same time, they need to be able to recover their costs. So what if we, give them a cap and then tell them go ahead, and then they can't do it under that cap? I think it starts to remove some of the benefits here that I'm expecting will be realized for ratepayers. I think that's one thing that the RD does really well, is explain that this is an investment, but we need to be able to get out, what we're putting in and much more than that.
Right. Well, I mean, it's, setting, just explicitly saying, these costs are approved, the 6-year, say, or 4-year program costs are approved, doesn't mean that there can't be overspend. I think we all realize with projects that, there is inflation and surprises happen, and usually they end up costing more, not less than what was proposed. But it wouldn't prevent them. It would just say, so the grid mod statute says costs no greater than the amount approved by the commission for a utility grid modernization project are presumed reasonable. So they would not enjoy that same presumption of reasonableness above the approved amount, and they would have to justify it. They would have to show us why it costs that much more. But I'm concerned that with this annual process, they would be, the company might say, until you've given us a year 2 spend amount, we got to stop. We got to stop and wait for you to give us an approval to spend a certain amount for year 2. That would be inefficient, I think.
I also believe that's unlikely. So that's why I'm still on the RD on this one.
Yeah, and I don't think we're approving actual costs right now. We will approve actual costs later. I think what the utility is doing here is reasonable, is they're seeking assurance that they can undertake this endeavor, which the Grid Mod Act allows them to do, entitles them to do. And it is a very large investment, which is why they're here saying, look, this is our plan. This is how much it's going to cost. This is how it's going to benefit ratepayers. And they need some assurance and certainty that the general plan makes sense and is reasonable. I think it would be difficult for them to undertake these grid modernization investments without having any kind of assurance that the commission later is going to reject everything, right, and find that it's not prudent. And so I think that's a reasonable suggestion that is presented before us.
What do you think about the idea of going ahead and approving the year 1 through year 6 estimated costs? And I would think that we could revise those if needed, but we will have, at least sort of set a number and have some, certainty going forward.
Yeah, again, when I read the law and the direction it points us in, approving a number, we're setting a floor, not a cap.
Chairman, may I make a comment? So I think this may be helpful clarification, but under either scenario, no matter which one is approved here, and P&M will come back in the first annual review filing with updated estimates for their year 2 costs. Now there's 2 ways that can play out, and under the OGC option, there would be another approval step at that point in time where the commission approves the year 2 costs because they haven't been approved in this order. Now, under Commissioner Ellison's view, I believe that there would not be an approval at that point, and P&M would be permitted to, I guess, show us what the year 2 costs are going to be and implement them into the rider. So from OGC's perspective, it's would be preferable for the commission to have that extra layer of oversight at that point in time. Because like I said, under either scenario, P&M is going to come back with estimated year 2 costs.
Okay.
Would you like to amend the order that's on the floor? And if you'd like to amend it and you'd like to get up and down vote, I'm happy to second.
Okay, well, I think on the first 2 topics, I'm not gonna do that because I can see which way those are headed. It may be more productive to discuss the third item on the AMI opt-out fee.
Okay, so Commissioner Aguilera, are you in agreement with moving on to item?
I am.
Opt-out? Okay. Mr. Lundin, could you briefly summarize the opt-out fee options?
Sure. So P&M's original proposal is not requesting approval of any particular monthly fee amount. Rather, it's requesting approval of a methodology to calculate that fee. Using P&M's requested methodology, they've estimated it to be approximately $28 a month. Now, the New Mexico Department of Justice submitted testimony on this issue, and under the DOJ's opinion, more than just, let me pause and back up a second. P&M's estimate was based on a cost model. So the cost of having the employees to read the meters, the cost of the trucks, the cost of the miles driven to read meters. So it's a cost-based rate, and NMDOJ takes more kind of considerations into it than just cost. So more like human factors, rate shock, etc. And ultimately, the DOJ proposes that the monthly opt-out fee should be the same as the monthly residential charge, which currently is $9.95. So that's kind of the baseline of the substance, and the alternative proposal would adopt NMDOJ's recommendation for a $9.95 opt-out fee.
Thank you. Okay, so the order as written is the methodology, and it's estimated to be $28.31 initially.
Could I clarify that, Mr. Lundin? I thought that apart from the methodology, it was setting that 28.31 as an initial number.
Not exactly, but it's probably going to be fairly close. So playing through the scenario of approving PNM's request, PNM would follow up this final order with an advice notice with the details of all their rate changes. And in that advice notice, they would tell us what the exact monthly opt-out fee would be. But the approximate $28 is an estimation at the time of the plan filing, which is at this point 2 years old. So there may be some variation in there.
Okay, but they're still, they're still gonna, there's a lot of guesswork involved in setting that initial number, because you don't know at the offset, how many people are gonna opt out and how they're gonna be geographically distributed. And so it's probably not gonna be drastically different than that number.
That's correct, sir. I don't imagine it would be drastically different.
Yeah, thank you. And then my thought on this one is we confronted this issue before. It was a order of magnitude bigger number on the SPS grid mod case. And in that instance, even though I didn't like the number, I concluded the best thing to do is set an opt-out fee that's reflective of the cost to the system, which means cost to other customers. So I'm inclined to keep it in that concept rather than just pick a different number that has the attraction of apparently being lower.
I mean, I'll weigh in here. I think that I'm not persuaded that the methodology here is accurate. And I am also concerned about the potential for rate shock. I mean, I agree with you that I think that whatever the additional burden may cost to not have AMI should be recovered by the utility, but and so I'm certainly open to seeing a different methodology that is informed by actual figures in the future. I will say that when we think about the ones we've approved in the past with EPE and SPS, even at the current charge, the current customer charge of $9.95, this would fall in between EPE and SPS. By this, I mean the $9.95 customer charge would fall in between the two that have been approved. I think at approximately $28, it's higher than what we've approved. And I think that in approving this methodology, we're also creating precedent. It'll be harder in the future to come down from that. I think it's probably puts us in a better situation if we maintain the current customer charge amount and then adjust it in the future.
So I'd like to make a few comments on this as well. I think that meter readers do more than just read meters. There is customer interaction. They may be the only utility employees that some people interact with. They also are eyes and ears on the ground. They can see if a meter case is broken or a connection is not proper or unsafe. If a transformer is buzzing and it sounds like it needs maintenance or replacement. So I'm not sure I think the calculation proposed by P&M really supposes that, the only thing that these people would do is read the meters of people who have opted out of AMI. And I don't think that's the only service that they provide. I do understand and agree that, the cost of service is always important and is always going to be, a key consideration. At the same time, there are a lot of people who feel strongly about this, and I think, we should try to give them a meaningful option of opting out. And if the charge is too high, a lot of people will feel that, they didn't really have that option.
Well, I agree with that. I mean, I understand that, public comment is not testimony in the record. But I do think that having the option of not having a smart meter installed should be accessible. At the price proposed right now, you're talking over $1,000 over a 3-year period. And I'm not sure that that is accessible to those customers. We don't know how many will opt out. And so, that's why I would also support the DOJ proposal on this issue because it makes it accessible for those who want to opt out.
Okay, so would you like to propose a motion to amend
Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
I can hear you, but I don't think the panel can hear you because they're all muted.
Oh, okay. Well, am I allowed now to say something about this grid?
That's up to the chair.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, good afternoon. I did send in an email requesting an ability to say a few sentences.
Ma'am, we took public comment at the time noticed on the agenda. And so at this point, you're disrupting the meeting. Okay, so let's proceed. Mr. Reddick Martinez, could you take a vote on this?
And Commissioners, just to clarify, this is the motion to amend the existing motion rather than a vote on an order itself.
Correct. We'll take a vote on the amended order at the end.
So this is a motion to amend the existing motion. The amendment would be replacement of the opt-out charge to match the existing customer charge of $9.95. Commissioner Aguilera.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Connell.
No.
Commissioner Ellison.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the motion to amend passes on a vote of 2-1.
Great, thank you. So next topic was I guess the grid mod rider rate, fixed versus variable. Can we start with clarification from Mr. Lundin of where we're at on that topic with the order that's on the floor?
So, sorry, I was.
Yeah,
telling Commissioner Ellison, sorry
multitasking.
about his mic. Which topic are we discussing?
The fixed versus variable with respect to the rider.
Okay, yeah, I believe I addressed that at the beginning, but both options for your consideration today would approve the rate to impose a fixed charge per customer rather than a volumetric charge as was proposed by certain parties in the docket, but then I guess caveated that. So the NMDOJ first initially proposed a volumetric rate instead of a fixed charge, but walk that back at some point in their supplemental testimony to say that they would support either or. But the options for you today are a fixed charge per customer.
So did somebody want to amend what's there or just have a discussion item about that?
No, I'm happy with what's being proposed. None of the parties were against it. You know, I do think it's relevant that you know, net energy metered customers, if it were on a volumetric basis, would essentially not be contributing because all of the volumetric based charges are, you know, wrapped up into the credit, the retail credit that they would receive. So I think for, you know, fairness, that having it as a fixed charge that, you know, everybody pays is most appropriate.
That any other comments on that topic? I don't have any.
None for me, Chairman.
Okay, so that was, I think, the list that we started out with originally. Are there other items that we'd like to highlight or potentially amend in the order that's on the floor as amended?
I guess there's one minor item, Mr. Chair, I think it's in, sorry, there's sort of too many pieces of paper in front of me right now.
Is this the paragraph 45?
Paragraph 45. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lundy.
Maybe 44 or 46, depending on your your version, sorry.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's paragraph 42 actually of, and I have this one sentence proposal that deals with the engineering stamps of approval, that essentially says the exceptions are rejected as it's written now. However, the commission expressly states that P&M
Hi, it's Miguel Perez. I'm sorry to interject, but the hearing room is on mute.
So this is Pat O'Connell hoping to reconvene this meeting. I think we have our technical issues worked out. During the break, we reviewed when the broadcasting stopped. And so actually we've had some discussion and some votes that were not broadcast. So I'll start. Is there anything more I need to say about that?
So my understanding is that the amendment vote regarding the opt-out fee was recorded, but the discussion preceding that vote was muted. So you could perhaps just recap the discussion preceding the opt-out fee vote.
Okay, so I'll take my version of summary, and certainly Commissioners Aguilera and Ellison correct me. We had a discussion on, originally we've moved approval of a final order that largely adopts the RD and addresses exceptions. We've been working through a process to amend that order on the floor. Through that process, we've discussed DOJ proposal on 6-year plan versus 4-year plan, a concept of including rebuttable presumption of reasonableness, and adjusting or changing the opt-out fee that's in the RD. Had a discussion on that. Commissioner Ellison moved, Commissioner Aguilera seconded to adopt the DOJ proposal, which would set the opt-out fee at the monthly customer charge of $9.95. That amendment passed on a vote of 2-1, with me being the dissenting vote. And then where are we at now? We're in the process of discussing suggestion to add statement about the Engineering Professional Services Act. So does that sound correct to you, Commissioner? Yes. Okay.
It does, thank you.
All right, great. So I think we're back on track. Commissioner Ellison has presented an edit that we have in our books about including a statement about compliance with it. Engineering Professional Services Act. Would you like to recap that, or?
Sure, Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to. So, during the hearing, the process, concerns were expressed about whether PNM had its AMI plan stamped by a New Mexico engineer, whether there had been appropriate engineering supervision over the AMI plans, and PNM's response is that, well, we don't have any stamped AMI plans because we haven't we're not at the stage yet to have plans at that specification, but they committed to work with their vendor to ensure that would happen. And this language simply reminds PNM of those statements that they made.
Commissioner Aguilera, did you have any you'd like to add on that?
It seems fine to me. I just want to double check this, practically doesn't have any change in the order except for just saying PNM, you should comply with those engineering standards that you need to comply with.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'm struggling with this one, just not because I have any objection to the substance of it. Certainly all utilities should comply with all laws. In this case, this was a law that was discussed. I think, as we've talked about before, the commission speaks through its orders. I'm afraid addition of this is a little bit of overwriting the order because I don't want to, by highlighting this one, make it look like it's more important than absolutely every other law that they have to comply with. So, and then we just came off of a case that dealt with something similar, right? There's the apprenticeship standards, and that one was a little more confusing, right? Because that is in a piece of law that governs electric utilities, but the law itself says this will be enforced by Department of Workforce Solutions. So we went ahead and put some guidance in an order around that. And for me, that was just because I understood the confusion around whose job was it to enforce that law. What we've done is recently no longer an issue at the Supreme Court. So I don't want to introduce confusion that we are the entity responsible for enforcing the EPSA. There is a board that does that, who isn't us. So anyway, just again, wholeheartedly agree, PNM has to obey absolutely every law, even the ones that we're not enforcing, and that this was an issue in the case, and so expectation of ours that they will. So again, don't disagree with that concept. I just don't want to include it in our final order. I think through the process of discussing it at this meeting, we've probably accomplished the goal of letting PNM know that's important.
I'm fine with that. I am not going to formally move it. I agree with everything you said.
Great. And totally different if we were the enforcement authority. That was kind of the thing that pushed it over the edge for me. But I appreciate you bringing it up, and as the professional engineer on this crew, I am institutionally in favor of the Engineering Professional Standards Act. Okay, are there other items that we would like to highlight or amend? Seeing none, just recap the motion that's on the floor. Motion that's on the floor is approval of a final order recommended by Office of General Counsel, and then as amended through the discussion process of this meeting. So that's already been moved. It's already been seconded. Any more clarification, questions, discussions before we vote? All right, seeing none, I'll just thank the parties that were involved. This has been a long case, and I know this isn't the outcome that some folks want to see, but I heard you and I respect your opinion. And that goes for everybody that participated in this case. Also want to say thank you to Christopher Ryan. This was a difficult case to manage. We asked him to do that. And so I appreciate his efforts in getting us to where we're at right now. So then I think we're ready for a vote.
So this is.
Aye.
Oh, excuse me, my mic was off then. Creating more mic issues, apologies. So this is the vote on the motion that has been amended and seconded as described by the chair. Commissioner Ellison?
Aye.
Commissioner O'Connell?
Aye.
Commissioner Aguilar?
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the motion to approve the order posed by OGC with the modifications you described passes with a vote of 3-0.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Lindy.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, I did want to state that I may be issuing an opinion on this. I'm although I'm not completely comfortable with not setting the total spend amount. I do recognize that the company has been applying for a long time for for these projects for the grid modernization, and I think you know, the benefit of those outweighs my concerns over the annual process.
Thank you, and I found your opinions to be educational, so I think that's great if you're gonna issue an opinion. Okay, so next item on the agenda is discussion and potential action. We have one item in that bucket, and that is a community solar report that's due to the legislature on November 1st. Presentation on that item is our Chief of Staff, Troy Corey. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. As you are aware, the Community Solar Act, specifically Section 6216B7E to be exact, requires the Commission to issue a report to the appropriate legislative interim committee by November 1st. That statute requires the report to address 10 separate items. I'll briefly go through them so we know what we're trying to do here. It requires us to report on the development of community solar facilities, the participation of investor-owned utilities and rural electric co-ops, low-income participation, the adequacy of facility sizes, proposals for alternative rate structures and bill credit mechanisms, cross-subsidization issues, local developer project selection and expansion of local solar industry, community solar facilities' effect on utility compliance with the RPS, an evaluation of the effectiveness of the Commission's rules to implement the Community Solar Act, and any recommended changes to the Community Solar Act. The team, a number of staff members contributed to this report, drafting different sections of it based on the work that the team members have done over the last 2 or 3 years. And so that is the draft that you have in front of you. And I stand for questions or comments.
Commissioners, did you have any questions, comments? I mean, I've got quite a few, but if somebody else would like to go first, certainly you can, or I'm willing to.
Go ahead.
So thank you for bringing this to this meeting this week, because what it does is it gives us a chance to see it. I know just from talking to you, it's viewed as being in draft form. It's also on the agenda in a place where we could vote. I don't think it's worthy of submission to the legislature. So the big issues are just kind of college drafting, writing as a communication tool type problems. I don't see that this was, as it sits now, that it respects the audience, right? So this is a report to the legislature. And when I go through the list of things the legislature asked us to report on, my view of what this report should be is let's give them some value, and the value would be, what does community solar look like from the PRC's point of view on November 1st of this year? And then are there any recommendations from us? So there's a lot of reliance on, you know, from this, what does community solar look like from our point of view? There's a lot of reliance on a recommended decision that hasn't been voted on. And then even if it does get voted on at the same meeting, there's still due process after that happens. So I don't see that as valuable to give to the legislature, because it's like, here's a cake we've half baked. It's not, here's the status. So it should be, this is an important thing that's happening. Here are the issues in that important thing, hasn't been decided yet, would be the way that particular, anything that refers to an RD should be drafted now, if you've got the audience in mind. And then as far as recommendations, there's at least 2 authors on this report, maybe 3. Doesn't look like they've met each other. So there's 2 different sections of recommendations back there. They're not always earned, there's a couple where if you're reading along, it's just like, where did that come from as a recommendation? There is no clear foundation for it in the report. So it's just bewildering when you get to it at the end. And then there are others that I don't think are supported by the report. Like there's legitimately a good discussion of how the concept of who subsidizes community solar, by how much, in what ways, that's a live topic right now that we're working with. I'd say we could even be honest and say we're struggling with that. So I don't mind a recommendation saying, hey, subsidy isn't clearly communicated in the law, so we're working through it. We haven't got that done yet. But then meanwhile, one of the recommendations is, so subsidize it more. So we haven't even figured out subsidies yet. So why are we making a recommendation of where to put the thumb on the scale in terms of subsidization? So I've got lots of just other nitpicky things about this, but that's really my big picture complaint. So then going back to where I started, just minimum, if we're respecting the legislature, that should have a executive summary. The summary should have the recommendations in it. So then when you're reading the report and you're getting into the substance of these things, you'll understand why am I paying attention to all this text that's in the report. And then at the end, conclusion, maybe a little more explanation of the recommendations, but it's, again, college drafting, tell them what you're going to say it, and then tell them what you said. So that structure is the kind of thing that I would like to see in a report written by the PRC. And then again, thank you for bringing it in front of us now, because there's time before October 31st. That's the good news. Bad news is there's not much time. So I think we're going to need you to lead the effort of pulling this report together. And so, I mean, broadly, these type of reports, I view them as your responsibility. It looks like other folks took on that responsibility, but without the leadership, direction, coherence, they didn't create that for themselves. So please take this by the scruff of the neck and get us a better draft in 2 weeks. With that request, I know you're busy. You've got a very important job and dealing with lots of stuff. So I wished you wouldn't have to be that involved in writing a report like this, but I think you do. And so what I can contribute to that, especially because he's not here today, is MacLean. So please assume you have MacLean as help because there's just a lot to do and time is short. So tried to provide these comments as a constructive criticism. Having said that, just I've seen this a few times now, and is that things get written here without the audience in mind. So if you're not thinking about who am I writing this for, you're writing it for yourself. And we got bigger, better things to do than sitting around writing self-examinations. So anyway, thank you for listening while I dumped my bucket on this report. And then I've got, like I say, other just kind of things I scribbled in the margins. I'm happy to hand those to you. It's not complete. And I'm sure there's questions, but again, call me, next week if you got any questions about what my chicken scratch says or means. So anyway, I am not in favor of voting on this report today.
Thank you, Chairman. So I sent my own nitpicky revisions already. I agree with your point that there's a lot of detail here. And so that's one of the things that I mentioned. One thing that I had suggested that was different than what you said is that, so the report goes, through the RD in detail, a lot of detail. And my concern was, this is not the final answer. And I think what you're saying, and so my thought was, let's give them the final answer. But I think you raise an interesting point, is that maybe they don't need all of that. And I agree that that might not be necessary. I think, and since we have discussed the schedule for the phase 2 in the past, I will say that OGC has let me know that they plan to have an order for the 31st, which is the day before this report is due. We may have some answers then. I think, there are probably a couple of really high level decisions that we're going to have to make that might be relevant for the report, but probably not all of that. And the chairman is right. It's still going to be subject to rehearing and potential appeal. I don't think that's a reason not to mention that, but it is a consideration. But I agree with the chairman, that we can, rework this to frame it more to what the legislature is probably looking for. Happy to help however I can. If you have any questions about my suggestions, just reach out. Thank you. And thank you to the team who did a lot of work to put it together.
I guess, personally, I thought it was interesting and useful. I do take the point. Is this exactly what the legislature needs? I'm not sure, but I found it to be interesting. I guess one thing that I thought was a lessons learned from the first round projects that I'm not sure really made it into this was that the developers didn't really have access to hosting capacity maps at the utilities that would let them know where are the interconnections likely to be really expensive and where are they likely to be not expensive. P&M does have that, but it seems to be geared more towards residential solar consumers, and the other two utilities didn't have it at all. And so developers bidding in projects having no clue as to what the interconnection costs or challenges, that was sort of a problem that came out of phase 1. And, maybe it was in here. I just don't remember seeing it, but I do think it should, it should be brought out. And I do have some comments about, a few of the details that I'll send to you.
And I just wanted to emphasize that exact point too, that despite tons of detail about something that isn't even final yet, one of the things I thought was a very valuable addition to the conversation that Community Solar has created was that map that got presented to us that showed here's where the interconnection costs are by location, because that really highlighted, for me anyway, this is areas where the grid has been ignored for too long, right? So Community Solar, we might not have projects up and running yet, but value has been created. And that was an example of a big piece of value that exists that I was hoping to have in the report. And so that's one of my chicken scratchers on here. Because we saw that graph, it was presented to us. Why isn't it in here, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. If you could get me those comments really as soon as possible so we can start working on these, we will get that turned around.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. And then that also is a preview for the world watching. The Halloween meeting is a heavy community solar meeting. Our next item on the agenda, are there anything more you think needs to be said? Yeah, I was gonna say you are next, so you get to segue into yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Switching pages. In my notebook, just a couple of updates that I've done hearing about this because the date is coming up, but not September. Apparently I missed a couple of months. November 4th and 5th is our seminar. We are in the final stages of being ready to release a detailed agenda. We're really excited about the speakers and the lineup. So
Okay, so for those of you online, we noticed that the internet went down again, so I asked Ms. Corey to pause her presentation, and then I think she's gonna go back a little bit, so apologies if it's redundant, but bears repeating.
thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, our seminar is second annual seminar is coming up November 4th and 5th. Registration link is live on our page. It is free. If you're interested in CLE credits, make sure you indicate that because we will give you a certificate of completion at the end of the seminar and you can submit those for CLE credits. We're really excited about the lineup. We have some exciting speakers, including the panels hosted by each of you. So thank you. Next, in two items that we're pursuing internally, mostly due to our strategic plan. If you all remember that long ago, we did that. One is the book club will be hosting its October meeting on Tuesday, discussing Richard Rhodes's book, Energy, A Human History. And then next week, or excuse me, not next week, but the 30th is our lunch and learn for October. So just wanted to highlight those dates for staff opportunities to find out perspective and think about new things and engage with your colleagues. I don't have any other updates, but I do stand for questions if you have anything you'd like to discuss.
Great, thank you. I read the book, but I'm not sure I'll be able to call in next week. So it was a good one. And I really enjoyed the book club so far and looking forward to what we do next on that. Learned more about England than I planned on, but. Any other questions for Chief of Staff? Okay, so next is communications with commissioners. So I'll go ahead and finish the thought there. Reason I might not be able to call into book club next week is I think all three of us are heading to San Diego for CREPC YRAB. That is, if you've looked at the agenda, very heavy on two concepts that I think Senator Munoz was kind of talking about this morning, is how do we build a bigger grid? So there's lots of conversations on the efforts to develop a better electric market out west, and then even more content on studies and groups that have formed around how do we build transmission grid in an efficient way. So that starts with, before the official agenda, there's a meeting that I think most of us will be at on Monday that is led by Weeb West Tech, I think is the right name for it. But that's a study looking at different transmission scenarios. How could they get built? And the real question is, these are transmission lines that cross state lines, right? So utilities within their own balancing area aren't shy about, have no problem building transmission lines, but what if it's a transmission line like one of the ones that shows up on many scenarios and many maps is from Colorado to New Mexico? You've got two utilities on each end of the line with co-ops in the middle. You got a state line, so you got two different commissions. You got FERC. So those are the kind of things that are going to get talked about a lot next week in San Diego. So looking forward to that. And then personally, I've also then the following week, Monday and Tuesday, will be in Little Rock with Southwest Power Pool's RSC's quarterly meeting. So certainly coming back from on the 31st, just heads up, I've been asking people not to wear costumes to that meeting, but I will definitely give any updates on actions that were taken at those meetings that affect us. So, Commissioner Ellison, did you have anything?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to mention our Utility Division Director, Ed Rolkoff, is in Atlanta at the NARUC Natural Gas Task Force meeting. So I'm glad he was able to attend, and I think he'll be bringing back some insights from that. The group he's working in is focusing on customer affordability. I will be in San Diego next week as well, arriving around noon, I think, on Monday, and I'll be arriving back the evening of the 23rd, so I won't be at that morning session on the 24th. I did just have a question for both of you about how you're handling your panels at the at our workshop in early November, whether you're going to have a discussion type format, or will your panelists be doing presentations, or how do you plan to organize that?
I handle panels with an iron fist.
Okay.
No, we haven't met yet. So my panel, we're going to meet October 25th. And so I'll use the wisdom of the group, just format. I think broadly it's on me to introduce the topic. Got great group of panelists, so give each one some space to give their view of their facet around that topic, and then I'll be ready with some questions, and we'll have a good discussion. Yes, going into the 25th, my plan.
I have a prep call scheduled as well, so haven't met and haven't figured out the details. So, I think that'll become clear in the next, probably a week before the actual presentation. Great. So I have, so also will be at Krebsy. I think that's a good description of, kind of what the theme is that you provided, Chair. And then I would also say that there is also a very large flavor of affordability. So, how are you going to grow the grid, and how are you going to make sure that it's affordable? And so the only thing I wanted to mention as well is that I'm the NMPRC member on the BOSSER. For those who might not be aware, that's the body of state regulators who's, the committee that is involved with the Western Energy Imbalance Market and extended day-ahead market that CAISO has. And so and for the last year, I've been the vice chair of that committee, and the current chair of that committee has decided that, they put in their time. And so, I put myself, for potentially being the chair of that committee. And so there will be a vote that needs to occur. And then, I will report back next time.
Duty-less Tuesday morning, so do you want me to disrupt your meeting?
No, thank you.
Disrupt the vote. So anyway, lots going on. Again, be a busy 2 weeks inside the commission and outside. So looking forward to meeting on the 31st. Is there any objection to adjourning? Seeing no objection, we're adjourned.